It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuche, and it's great to have you here once again. We're going to be kicking off the show, as we always do, with the week that was, looking at all the things that have shaped Nigeria in the last week. And I have here with me a very special guest, Ikeme Sidefyong. Thanks for being here today.
A pleasure, as always.
We have to start with the big one. The Senate President has been in the news for all the interesting reasons, let me use that word. He's had a few run-ins with the Code of Conduct Bureau with regards to assets declared or not declared, and a lot of figures have been thrown around. He issued a statement denying it, and we hear about an arrest or a warrant of arrest being issued. What's your take on all of that's been happening?
Oh, okay. For a lot of people, they've imputed some, political undertones to what's going on. But like I like to say, because I've talked about this issue a few times on online platforms, he is grounded in law, really. Now, by virtue of the Code of Conduct Bureau, there are certain things that public officials, and that includes people like the President, the Vice President, and the Senate President himself, Bukola Saraki, are not supposed to do. So, having been on the opposing side and having worked on the opposite side with Code of Conduct Bureau officials, I can imagine that some of the things that it was charged for would be things like having a foreign bank account, which public officials are not supposed to have, and with declaring his assets. Now, the interesting bit about that was that the last time he was said to have done it in 2003, he actually did it a couple of days before he became governor of Kwara State at the time. And by virtue of the Code of Conduct for public officials, he was supposed to have done it either a month after he has gotten into office, or at the end of his term or something like that. It's not clear whether he did that, and by virtue of the charge sheet as we know it, he's essentially supposed to just come and explain how he was able to acquire certain assets, certain monies in foreign bank accounts and stuff like that. So essentially that's what it is. But for a lot of people, it just seemed like the Code of Conduct Bureau is bringing this at a very convenient time, with respect to all of the political machinations that have been going on.
We'll get into the political side of things. So let's look at, because he did respond, and he stated clearly that he's declared his assets 2 more times since 2003. He did say he declared in 2007 and 2011, and that he's never owned a foreign bank account or kept a foreign bank account since he's been governor. And so why is his own statement not being taken into context in all of this?
Well, the interesting bit about this is that this is why, for example, the trial will become important, because it's going to be at the Code of Conduct Tribunal that he should come and lead all of that. But it seems like from the message emanating from his camp is that he seems generally unwilling to have this out there in the tribunal, because the tribunal it's a public venue. The press will be there. There will be a lot of public scrutiny, and it will just add to what seems to be a growing list of bad press with respect to how his time, albeit a very short time, in the Senate presidency has been. So I think there's just been that general unwillingness on his part to have it out there here. So issues like him not showing up in court that led to the bench warrant that was issued for him, become important, in that regard. Yeah.
You've mentioned politics there, and of course a lot of people are thinking the same thing. People are trying to tie all of this to the race for the Senate president's seat. I mean, he was a huge part of the APC's campaign, both for his own seat as a senator and the general elections for president and all of that. And he was quite instrumental in making sure his state was delivered, using that word that Nigerians like to use, to the APC. And he's worked very hard for the party, and it looked like when they got into power, he sort of became the rebel, with how he took the Senate presidential seat. And since then, there's been no love lost between him and Aso Rock, and him and a lot of party bigwigs and all of that. So, are we wrong to assume that that's what's happening here?
I don't think we are. I think it's a legitimate inference to make, right? The issue when you speak with people from his camp, and you try to impute a certain kind of interpretation, some his cryptic statements, that's on the odd occasion that he has made statements in public, is that it seems that he Mr. Saraki seems a bit shortchanged, you know, by all of that. You've talked about the very, very vital political contribution he made to the president coming into power and all of that. And for a lot of people, they just feel, well, it's a no-brainer. Okay, if he wants the Senate presidency, fine. He was close to being a ranking senator. In the last national assembly, a two-time governor of the state. It comes from a very influential political family, so they feel, oh, okay, it's not beyond him to have that. So when behind the scenes processes seemed to suggest that he was not going to get it, and then there was enough of a political backlash from the PDP side of things, right? And they had enough numbers to at least technically push him above that line. He took it, and you know, what would you would have thought would have been by now September. I mean, we're talking about things that developed in May and June. You know, would have thought, oh, okay, maybe Aso Rock and maybe some other interested parties would have moved on from it. It seems like political observers are quick to note. Memories are very long in Nigerian politics. Yeah.
What does this say? I mean, like you said, we're all just inferring. We can't necessarily say that this is what's happening, but a lot of people have the same feeling about what's happening. What does this say about the party? Because I mean, it looks like whenever it looks like there's someone in the party who's about to shine or shining, if I may use those words, things start coming out. I mean, we saw what happened with former Governor Fashola when it looked like he was going to be getting an appointment. I mean, we don't know for sure, but all of a sudden he went from being this messiah and clean guy to things started leaking and coming out, and then suddenly he's quiet. And now we have the Senate president who went through with his ambition, and now they're trying. I mean, we had a case about his wife initially. Yeah. We don't know what's up with that. Now it's him. Should the APC say something?
In this case, the APC, you know, they have addressed the issue without addressing the issue, because they haven't called names, they haven't directly spoken about that fact, but they've said things like accusing the PDP of not allowing Aso Rock take Nigeria away from Egypt to the promised land, quote and unquote. Yeah, so just a cryptic circuitous, you know, secretary's way of addressing the issue. But I think with respect to the Saraki issue, I think for me it isn't too much of a surprise. The APC seemed to have a very coherent message during the electoral campaign. They seemed to have their political machinery went into overdrive, especially from the media perspective, in order to sell their message. However thin, you know, that message was to Nigerians and all of that. But I think what we're seeing right now is just the effects of the fact that the party has matured from being the opposition to being the party in power. There's a lot more scrutiny. You know, people now actually know, people within the party now actually know, oh, we're there, so we should have access to certain things. And so they're fighting for it. So it is the typical Nigerian ruling party syndrome where, you know, a new movement starts up, everything seems good and coherent and ambitious and rational at points, yeah, until it's time to share, you know, yes, and then everybody starts looking out for their own interests.
And it's the crazy part of all of this is that the Senate has hardly sat since June.
Yeah.
And we're in September, nothing has happened in the Senate besides, you know, the tussle for power in all ramifications, basically. Yes. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen with the Senate president?
I wish I could say, well, you know, I mean, in the short term, the trial will have to go ahead, you know, yeah, in one way or the other. The bench warrant has been issued. I would imagine that Saraki's lawyers would probably advise him to show up in court and all of that. The bench warrant really, it is, especially at this level, he is a politically significant person. It is more of a formality. It's really just to get him to show up in court. So he would show up in court. I think that's the first bit. But going forward, and I have spoken with several people on this, it may probably be in the president's interest, you know, going forward to just probably, you know, let him be. This is, of course, not taking away from the fact that Saraki still has some very important questions to answer with respect to, you know, his assets and what he owns.
So we'll be watching that space very closely, especially because the Senate hopefully soon will be getting a ministerial list, and the Senate president should be there to be a part of those who will be screening.
Of course, there should be a Senate president.
And so we don't know what's going to happen with that case. The president promised us ministers before the end of September. This week should be the last proper week of September. I know there's a public holiday, so we're looking at maybe this week that might happen. Let's talk about the ministerial list now.